Hey folks, we are going to go to the comments for the topic for today. So I wanted to say thanks to viewers for writing in. This one says, "Hey, had a question. I'm currently at a startup with less than 20 engineers. I'm just getting into my career as a software engineer, less than a year of experience, and I don't feel like I'm getting mentored much. Is this normal? And could it be detrimental to my growth as a software engineer?" And said, "For context, I feel like I'm keeping up with other engineers, but it's all on my own." So they're kind of interested in like if you're at a startup, especially a smaller one, I would consider 20 people smallerish. Um, like what maybe what's normal, what's expected. So I'll talk through that. I just gotta punch in. Let me get the car started. We gotta driving a CrossFit. We have the CrossFit first CrossFit Open workout, which means I'm about to be destroyed by something or a series of things that I'm very bad at, which is great news. Insta 360 is going. Hopefully, we don't see anything too crazy. The Amazon driver that was parked in my driveway for 20 minutes has decided to leave the driveway, which is very nice. And we'll get started here. So I'll start off with turning the beeping off. So for context, because I realize different viewers coming from or that may be returning and some that may be brand new here. The context for me is that I currently work at Microsoft as a principal software engineering manager. It's been just under 5 years. But prior to that, I worked at a startup. And I worked at that startup from around the time it was around 7 people until it was in the mid 200s. The company was very successful. They IPO'd a year after I left, and then a year after that, they got bought back to private for roughly $2 billion. That's with a B. And so, unfortunately, I missed those parts, but was there at the beginning and through a lot of the extreme growth phases and stuff. So that's the context for when I go to talk about some of this stuff. And of course, everything that I'm going to say here is purely my own opinion and my experiences. Every scenario is going to be different. So all that I can do is try to share my experiences and then try to call out biases and generalize as much as possible. So if you want questions answered, leave them in the comments or send a message to DevLeader on social media. That's also my main YouTube channel that has more succinct, edited down videos, so it's not just me rambling in a car. Okay, so I would say I wouldn't be totally concerned, right? And the the short version of this whole video is I think I turned out okay and I didn't have mentors. So, or at least in like the obvious sense. So not to be totally concerned about. I just realized I'm also in the wrong lane and it's too late. But that's okay. The directions will adjust. Thank you, Google Maps. I'm going to a different gym today. That's why. I want to say, and again, this isn't going to be the same everywhere, but I feel like in a startup, for those of you that have not been in a startup, depending on when you get into the startup, it might be kind of past some of the really big hurdles. Okay, like if you haven't run a business before, you may not realize that no, it's not just writing code and creating the software. There's a lot more going on. It could be finding your market fit. You're trying to build something and get it in front of people, and you're not even sure if people are interested in it. But now you have employees and you got to be paying. Like it's there's a lot of stuff going on, right? It's not just steady state. That's probably the last thing that it is. And I think it's important to realize that because in my opinion, for startups to have better chances of success, it's going to mean that not a normal amount of time and effort goes into making those things happen. Now, for people that have had success building startups and founding companies and stuff, and I don't have stats on this. This is just my understanding, but I bet you their first one was probably them working around the clock and it was a nightmare, right? It was super hard work. I bet you the second one was maybe if they're serial entrepreneurs, I bet you the second one was a little bit less crazy. And as you progress and they have more success at doing these, they're able to understand what to focus on more effectively. It doesn't mean there's not going to be bumps in the road and stuff, but it gets a little bit easier, at least a little bit more clear. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is that because startup life is going to be a little bit nuts, I think that it requires, and maybe requires too strong of a word, I think that you will be better off if you're the kind of person who is very proactive, very eager. The reason I say that is because if you're looking for a lot of structure, you're waiting for things to be kind of put in front of you, laid out a certain way, I think that given the lack of structure that you'll probably find at most startups, the amount of pivoting, the amount of change, the amount of uncertainty in like all aspects, you will probably find it difficult, right? If you're looking for that kind of structure. So when this person's writing in to ask about like, hey, like I don't have a dedicated mentor, or I don't feel like I have a lot of mentorship built in, the reason I'm saying I wouldn't be too concerned about that is like, if you are the kind of person who is, very eager to go solve problems, I don't know if it's like a, whatever, too cheesy, but like a go-getter kind of thing that's too cliche to say. But I think if you're that type of person, when you're at a startup, there's all sorts of problems in front of you that need to be solved, right? All of these challenges that need solutions, or that could have solutions. Maybe I shouldn't say need. And I think that if you're in an environment that gives you some of that autonomy to be able to focus on things, and you have other team members that are similar, then instead of having mentorship look like I have, someone that's much more senior than me and they are my mentor, instead what you get is almost like a network, right? You're given autonomy, so you can be going and kind of, if you're kind of an eager type, you're pushing the limits on what you're trying and learning and all these challenges that you're focused on. And simultaneously, the people around you are doing similar things. Now, because all of you, let's hope, are similar-ish in that regard, where you're all eager, excited to solve problems, that kind of thing. When I talk about this network effect, it's like the people around you are also doing similar types of learnings, perhaps in different areas. And instead of having like, the senior on the team or that's in close proximity to you being your obvious mentor, the entire team around you is a group that can help you up level. And so if I even reflect on my own experience, right? When I said, I didn't have mentors, that probably isn't a fair statement. I didn't have like what we might call a traditional mentor, right? It's not like I had, the senior person on the team that had, all these years of industry experience. Words are hard. And, we could all just look up to them and learn all these things, and they were very applicable. A lot of the times we would even have senior people that would come into the company with many more years of experience than me, but because they hadn't navigated the sort of things that we were doing, and arguably, I don't know, I'm not going to say like they're bad engineers or anything like that, not the case. I just mean their ability to, provide lessons and mentorship that is applicable maybe didn't work as well or fit as well. There were some times where we'd have senior people come in and I'm like, your experience is actually not helpful in this regard. And there were other people that were significantly more junior that were kind of pushing boundaries in different ways, that it was like, there's a lot more that I can learn from that person, right? I'm trying to think of a good example. I know that, people that come from bigger companies into startups, like it's usually process, and process isn't necessarily bad, but sometimes these people would, the only thing they knew was process, and they would try to fit it in at a time where we absolutely did not need it. Now, my bias, of course, being in the startup that's growing, is to have a bias for things like against process, of course, because we're like, hey, we have less of it and it seems to be working well. We stay agile. And at some point, some amount is helpful. but people would come in and like basically try to change everything or expect that we do, and it's like that's just not going to be a fit. We have to look at the lessons that process introduces and if that's going to be valuable so we can apply it. So to go back to the mentorship part, like in my case, the more senior people, not often were providing that kind of thing. And it would either be honestly like peers or, it could be people that were, arguably more junior to me, where I'm learning a lot from them. So it looked different, right? It wasn't that I have a mentor that I can go call up and get on my weekly or monthly one-on-one with and, ask them career advice and all this kind of stuff. I might say like the closest thing to a mentor would have been my HR manager, HR director. And even for her, look at this guy. Like that was the best lane change I've ever seen. You basically cut me off without a signal. Okay. But my interactions with her are less about my specific, like how to progress my career from her experience, because she might not have, and that might not be a fair statement. I was going to say maybe like because she hasn't been through it before, but she is a people leader. She's seen progression and stuff like that. So yeah, maybe arguably my HR director would have been like the closest thing to my mentor. But in terms of like understanding, I want to think of a better example here. I think the person writing in is probably saying like, I don't have someone who's mentoring me like as a software engineer. And I think that's what I'm trying to relate to. I never had that either. But I had my team members that were also, passionate about what we were doing, learning, and sharing their learning, right? It was very open so that, if one team was trying something and it's like, that's not working or it is working, like we're going to share that knowledge and we're going to learn from it. But yeah, going back to my HR director, she would have been someone probably giving me mentorship as especially on the people side of things, right? How do you navigate people things? And as a manager, that's obviously a very important part. That might not feel as applicable for some individuals watching. If you're like, okay, as an individual contributor, my mentor is going to be the HR person, like that doesn't feel that doesn't feel good, or that doesn't feel that useful. For me as a manager, yeah, I guess I have to go back on my statement a little bit. She would have been the closest thing to a mentor there. And I did learn a lot from her, so it would have been on the people side of things, though. So if the concern, I kind of want to think about some actionable things here because I got about 5 minutes before I'm at the gym. I would say like, no, don't be concerned. I would say if you feel like you're in an environment where you're learning a lot and you're like constantly learning and it feels like things that are valuable, like if you feel like you're learning a lot, but you're like, I don't know how I would ever use this or where the value is, maybe it isn't as valuable. But if you're like, hey, this is all good learning, I'm learning a lot, it's challenging, it's like an ongoing thing, I would say like that's a great environment to be in. You don't necessarily need a mentor to tell you that kind of stuff. Now, beyond that, right, like there's nothing that says that you need mentorship to come from a specific person, right? It could be multiple people. It could be people that aren't at work with you, right? If you really feel like you need an individual that you can reach out to and have mentorship, that kind of thing, there's an accountability aspect, I think, for a lot of people. Like when I was doing bodybuilding, I would still hire a coach, not because I had no idea how to lift weights or look at my nutrition, but I had accountability to someone. And for some individuals, a mentor might provide that, which then is a very good reason. If you're like, hey, I need the accountability aspect, then by all means, I would say seek out a mentor. But they don't have to be an individual person. They don't have to be on your team or even at the company you're at. And sometimes having someone that's external can be very helpful. And if you have multiple people that are external, that can be helpful too. Right? Mentorship can come in all different shapes and sizes, and I think that's the kind of thing that I want to drive home here. So, like, unfortunately, I don't have mentorship services. I think if I wasn't working full time, then that might be a thing I open up. But I don't have, like, I already do this through work, right? And I don't have capacity outside of work with everything else I'm doing. Otherwise, I would absolutely just offer it as a service and say, great. But I would feel very bad not having proper time allocation and, you know, sort of the mental capacity to mentor others. So unfortunately, what that means is that I just make these videos. That's the closest thing I have to mentorship at a larger scale. But I would say you probably want to understand, like, or at least give this a thought, right? Like, where do you feel like there are gaps? And that might be a weird question to ask yourself, but like, do you feel like you're like on the technical side, like things are good? Because I was talking about challenges and learning opportunities. Like, do you feel like you're getting that? And if so, like, where do you feel like the gaps are? Is it more about like, okay, I don't really understand career progression, or I would like better understanding of it? If so, what you could do is try to seek out someone that has gone through this kind of thing, right? Try to find someone. I mean, it doesn't have to be like this, but I like to think about it as someone that has successfully done what you've done, or want to do, my apologies. And there was if you guys know who Alex Hormozy is, he's a content creator and pretty wealthy individual. He had a really good way to put it, but he had like this tiered list of like 4 or 5 things. But basically it was like, you know, someone that's done what you want to do and has successfully coached others in doing so as well is probably the ideal person to look for. But it doesn't have to be a dedicated one-on-one, like, recurring thing. And it can always start as something much smaller, right? Having conversations with someone, reaching out on social media, getting some messages and stuff exchanged. And then over time, you build up that relationship. So if you don't feel like you have that in your place of work, that's not the end of the world. Because number one, you may be getting some of that learning and growth through your peers and through the work that you are doing, and that could be excellent. And if you want something more than that, even if it's not available at work, it still could be something that you seek out in addition. So this is just a short video. I hope that's helpful. I'm just pulling into the CrossFit parking lot, and I'm the kind of person that when I'm driving in a busy spot, my other senses don't work because I'm trying to look and listen. So I turn down the music and stuff when I go to park, that kind of thing. I see my wife is here, and there's a parking spot beside my wife. Did she leave me enough space? She did? Wow. Thank you, wife. We'll park right beside the X5. This is the other code commute vehicle sometimes. I can't see how far back things go. Probably right about there's good. Cool. Okay. Hope that's helpful. Mentorship looks different for everyone. And startup stuff is very fast paced. So hope you enjoy. I'll see you next time.